I don't know if we do or not. We're going to find out in a minute. I think it's going to be, I think this first meeting is going to be a little tough to get it because we don't have all our apparatus down. Okay. No, it doesn't. Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm going to call to order the Solid Waste Disposal and Recyclable Materials Processing Authority of Broward County. I've got some big shoes to fill here, and Greg's in the audience even, so glad to see you there, though. I know. I don't know if we're going to, as long as he doesn't put one of those public comment things on there. Okay, we'll start with the welcome and Pledge of Allegiance. Greg, you want to start us off? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to find out. We do need to get a flagpole or something.
Yeah,
I mean,
we're working with facilities.
that shouldn't be that hard. Okay, if we could do roll call.
You got it.
Okay.
Is it Chair Fur right now or Vice Chair?
I guess it's chair.
Okay, Chair Fur.
Here.
Member Shuham.
Here.
Member Mateo Bowen. Member Mike Ryan.
Present.
Member Dunn.
Present.
Member Mead.
Here.
Member AJ Ryan.
Here.
Member Newton.
Here.
Member Glassman. Member Bright Cruz.
Here.
Member Geller. That's it. Yeah, that's on.
We have a quorum?
Yeah. Okay.
Very good. Very good. Okay, with that, we will go on to public comment. I'm going to start with Richard Ramcharat. This is my turn to mess up. Ramcharatar, tell me. No, not yet. Press it a little voice. It looks like a little voice.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Ramcharatar.
Okay. Yeah, it's pronounced Ramcharatar.
Ramcharatar.
Yeah, just the way it's spelled.
Ramcharatar. Got it.
So,
We'll see. I should have been. I know.
Yeah, so good morning and congratulations on your chairmanship. And thank you for all the committee members for being here and inviting us out this morning to speak to you. I had a prepared speech, but I ran a little bit behind with my schedule here, so I'm just going to wing it. And so I wanted to announce that Miami-Dade County recently, just this past week, passed a resolution to ban single-use plastics in all of their government facilities. That includes the airport, the seaport, their government buildings. So I would like to say that this is a great way for us to reduce waste and pollution. And I think that Broward County should take this up seriously and pass this here in Broward County as well. Broward County Mayor is partnering with a California nonprofit, and we're going to be putting on the first Zero Waste Forum here in Fort Lauderdale, in the Fort Lauderdale area. It's going to be at the Ann Cove Nature Center from March 30th to April 5th. And we would like to invite you, Mr. Chairman, to be a keynote speaker, if you would be so obliged, and to help us open up this meeting. Thank you.
Do you have an exact date for that?
Yeah, it starts March 30th. The workshops will be April 1st to April 2nd. So I'll send you an email.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
You also may want to look at what happened in COP yesterday, COP 29 in Baku, with regard to zero waste. Take a look. It was
Yeah, and this is all about zero waste, and we're going to, there's also an opportunity for businesses to come and get certified.
Okay. Next we have Debbie Green. Good morning, Deb.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I know that there's been some, one of the things that you're working on is the survey to go out for the, with the Solid Waste Authority. One of the things that we've learned just from within Southwest Ranches, and as you keep moving on and speaking to people, I think one of the most important things to include in that survey is when you're asking people if they're willing to do certain things or willing to pay a certain amount more money or willing to separate, that it's important to put in there the why. Like, are you willing to pay an additional $100, whatever it is, if you knew you could avoid having incinerator? Are you willing to separate if you knew that you could avoid having an incinerator or any of, those harmful disposals, and taking it away from landfills and moving in a different direction? So that's just one of the things that we've learned. It's rather than just asking a question, you need to have the why in there, because then people will give a very different answer if they know the why. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Do we have our survey already ready?
We can make a modification.
Okay. Next, Jim. Jim, I don't know your last name.
Jablaski.
Jablaski. Oh, okay. Not that I would ever see that from here.
Thank you. Okay, I'm Jim Lasky, Southwest Ranches, Florida. One thing I never hear us discussing is all these harmful effects as it relates to particle size and the filters that are going to go on an incinerator. At what point do they stop filtering, and then there's back pressure, and then the filter perhaps gets changed? But what is the micron size of the particles it filters? I've never heard anybody mention that. A lot of that has to do with the cost of maintenance on that. And so I'm concerned that both the landfill that we discovered, okay, has a lot of particles, microplastics to be specific, and PFS. They can go hundreds of miles, thousands of miles. The only thing that brings them out of the atmosphere is rain. So what's going on here? We're not even discussing or assessing the real risk of what we're talking about. It would be interesting if our consultant can come up with some of the mechanics of the filtration system and what particle sizes they separate. I know if you run any kind of machinery, big machinery, uses a lot of fuel or whatever else, particle size and the performance of the engine itself and the maintenance, constant maintenance on the machine itself is all based around how often you got to change the filtration system. If you don't do that, it don't put out power. If you don't have the ratio of air to fuel, you got black smoke. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Next, we have Mike Ewell.
Thank you. My name is Mike Ebal. I'm the founder.
Ewell, sorry.
That's okay. Founder and executive director of Energy Justice Network. We're a national organization, and I actually hail from Philadelphia, surrounded by the worst cluster of trash incinerators in the nation, including the largest of them. And I'm here. I've been here for the past month helping out our member group, Broward Clean Air, and others throughout Florida in the pushback against this rush to build new incinerators. Part of my history is that I actually developed the zero waste hierarchy that's now used as an international standard through the Zero Waste International Alliance. I'm on their technical body that also defines what the term zero waste means internationally. And I met with them just in the past couple of weeks. I also do consulting for local governments in terms of zero waste plans for counties and for municipalities on both the zero waste side and avoiding incineration. Part of that work has included doing comprehensive life cycle assessments on incineration versus landfilling. And I know this is not something that perhaps some folks here want to hear, but when you use the most comprehensive life cycle assessments, looking at not just climate, but 8 other environmental and health criteria, including asthma, cancer, and other impacts like particulate matter that causes heart attacks and strokes, coming out of incinerators versus trucking or bringing by rail waste to a landfill. We found consistently in these studies that landfilling is the lesser evil, that incinerating and putting ash in a landfill is much more harmful, about 2 to 3 times more harmful. And there have been no incinerators built at a new site in this country since 1995, despite hundreds of attempts.
Thank you.
So
Thank you,
I'll
Mike.
just wrap up quickly and just say, you're not likely to be the first. I know your ILAs, your scope of work for the consultant for the solid waste master plan are all pointing in the direction of saying incineration is better and is preferred. I'm telling you that that is not the case, and that I would be happy to consult with you and just help you understand what the data actually says elsewhere in the country.
Thank you. Okay, with that, that concludes our public comment. We're going to go to approval of the minutes. I'll take a motion. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. We'll move on to the executive director report.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you.
Okay.
We have a very full schedule with the presentation especially. So we'll go through this pretty quickly. Let's see, financial update, assets, 1,000,004. Let's see, I got to see that. 1,464,506. Total liabilities, 1,464,506. We are up to date with all of our payments on all of the billing. Our aging only comes out to be right around, let's see, as of October, about $106,000 worth. Most of that is starting payments with regards to the contract with SCS. Any questions on the finances? Okay, go to the next one. Next one, with regards to the Solid Waste Authority, the member invoicing, the update, I just want to make sure there weren't any questions with regards to the invoices that went out earlier this week. They went out both to each of the members here, along with the interested or the city staff list that I have. If there's any issues with that, please get a hold of me. I think everything went out appropriately. I haven't heard anything yet, but they are out. So if there's any questions or anything, please get a hold of me. Is there any questions from today?
Did they just go?
They just went out
Okay.
Wednesday.
All right.
After the approval that you saw in the
Okay.
email. Yes. Okay, so next item, website update. As you know, we are constantly looking at ways to, and we're taking notes to actually improve the website right now. There's a number of items that we have been mentioned to be able to improve the website. So the website version that we have right now is version 1.0, as they say. All right, we are working on an update to the website, the version 2.0. We hope to be able to roll that version out into January when we have a number of the other items done with regards to the surveys and integrated communication plan that we'll present here in just a moment. If there are comments, please get them to us with regards to the improvements you'd like to see. If there's items that you'd like to see improved with regards to the website, we're open. We're very open-minded about it. Please let us know what we can do to improve.
I will say, I took a look at Miami-Dade's. Have you had a chance? If you have a chance,
Yep.
it's a very good website. They've had years to put it together. So, but there's a lot of stuff there.
That was one that we actually went through with
Okay.
our PR. With our
Yeah, I was pretty
relations.
impressed with what they had there.
Yeah, so we are using that as somewhat of in our improvement in version 2.0.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you. I had a chance to meet with Todd this past week.
Okay.
And one of my suggestions or one of my concerns about the website is the readability. And so when I asked what the readability index was for the way that the language is currently written, it's really written at a college level. And if we want it to be accessible to all residents, we need to bring the reading level down. So just in case that's something that anyone else is concerned about, we talk through it.
The Lexus file.
Member Dunn has been
Librarian talk.
you've been very helpful with regards to a number of these items with regards to the outreach. Thank
No,
you.
that's good to know. That's good to know.
And we are making those, taking those into account for version 2.0.
Keep it simple. Keep it simple.
Yes.
I didn't say stupid.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, that is as on the website. Okay, next thing, update on the update. And this is really a placeholder, was for the discussion here and to give an update with regards to what happened with the election, our election process, how that's going to work out, answer questions here about how we're going to be able to move forward. We will be having our general membership, the general board meeting / executive committee meeting in January, as we talked about last month, to be able to finalize the election and some of the other votes. But I have Jamie here so that he can go through some of that detail.
Thank you. So as we've discussed, we're going to need to amend the bylaws because of the amount of days we had to fill vacancies, et cetera. The current plan is on January 24th, I believe is the meeting, is when the elections will take place. So prior to January 24th, each of the cities, if they're making any changes in their governing board representative, they need to let us know. So because at the January meeting, there's first going to be a governing board meeting, which will approve the change to the bylaws, and will also need to replace some vacancies on the executive committee. The executive committee terms are 2 years, so everyone has another year, except we have 4 vacancies. We have in the large city group, Vice Mayor Davis is now on the county commission, so she's no longer representing Miramar. In the medium cities, we had Villalobos and Ross, Mayor Ross, who was also the chair. They are no longer in office, so those 2 medium spots will need to be filled. And then the medium alternate is Commissioner Myerson, and he's no longer. So we're going to have to fill that alternate position. So those are not filled by the entire governing board. They're just by each group. So the large cities will have to meet and decide who's going to take that 1 vacancy. And then the medium cities are going to have to meet and choose 2 members and an alternate. So that will all have to happen at that meeting. So that will be the first meeting. Then they'll also have to choose a chair, and I guess vice chair was already selected. So I know Chair Furr is already the vice chair. So we have an opening for chair for the governing board. Then once that's done, we'll have our executive committee filled, and the executive committee will meet, and they're going to need to select a chair as well, because we don't have a chair for the executive committee. So that will all be done in January.
You said 4. You had Davis?
It's Davis, Villalobos, Ross, and Myers. The medium alternate is also.
All right. Thoughts, everybody? Mayor?
Okay, Jamie, just a couple of questions. First, with respect to, I just want to clarify the vacancies issues. For instance, losing a seat on the executive committee is now open to the category of cities as a whole, not a replacement, correct? Just so everybody understands.
That's correct. So if, for example, at the large cities, Miramar is going to choose someone else to fill Vice Mayor Davis's spot, but that person does not automatically get on the executive committee. The large cities, all their large city representatives from the governing board level will choose who that will be.
Right, I understand. I'm laying the groundwork here because there's multiple steps here, including the uptake of information that's necessary for whoever comes in. I'm concerned about the pace of where we're at. I know that we have the December 20 meeting, and we're going really more than a month to the next meeting. And we've been hearing at the county level, the exigency of the landfill, how serious and how rapidly we have to move. There isn't time to waste. And yet we're going to be pushing out just placement of members. So I put it to the body as to whether or not we should be amending this schedule because of the claimed exigencies that we are facing, so that we can get, for instance, we'll just choose Miramar. I'm not choosing them for any other reason, but it was the first example. Let them choose their member now. Hurry up and do that. And then schedule an organizational meeting before the governing board. Let there be an organizational meeting. Let the large cities choose. Let the mediums choose. And this way, by the time we get to the governing board meeting, that we actually have members who can be ready to go and be potential chairs or whatever. So I put to the body that I think we should look very carefully not only at maintaining the December 20th meeting in the spirit of trying to get all of the cities to do what's necessary. Maybe Parkland's already done it. I don't know if they've chosen their member yet as the alternate, and report to the executive committee, even if it's a short meeting. We have other things we can cover, and then schedule an organizational meeting purely for that purpose. Short meeting, let the large and the mediums figure this out. And then proceed forward so that on the 24th, we're actually having a meaningful governing board meeting with members who are be prepared to talk about the budget and all the other issues we need to. So I put that out there, and I'd like to have a discussion on that because I think we're moving too slow.
Any other thoughts on that? Carol?
I certainly don't have any issues expediting it. I don't know if you've already planned, anyone's planned to be away or things like that. I think the greatest challenge is going to be having the cities have meetings between now and December 20th to fulfill the roles. For example, do we know?
I think everybody probably has a December meeting that we're here before Thanksgiving. We can alert them and say, look, please put this on your agenda. Get that done before we get to the December 20 meeting, then we at least have it. There may be a city that doesn't, that's in this, and then of course that we'd have to revise that, but that's up to those cities.
So I guess, Council, that's the question. If there's sufficient time for the cities to have all of their appointees in place by December 20th, I think we should try to do it.
Right, we certainly could do that. We could, instead of, getting the whole governing board together is difficult, so doing it in December and January may be too difficult, but you don't really need to. You could just do everything we were planning on doing in January, we could do on December 20th at that meeting. We just need to get notice out probably to the cities immediately that they need to, if they're going to be changing their governing board member or filling a vacancy, they need to do it immediately. I know a lot of cities have already done
the
it.
organizational meeting on the 20th.
Sure.
And have that done so that whoever's coming in, who is going to be that member, has a full month to be up to speed. I think the 24th is still too late. I'll address that later. But I think for the purposes of getting organized, we should take advantage of the time we have right now.
And then, Council, my only question is the amendment that we have to the bylaws, does the change in that date, I think it was no later than, so by
Yes,
moving it earlier, we're fine.
That'll be fine. That meeting, they would approve the change to the bylaws. And at that meeting, they could elect all the replacements, and they can elect the chair, and we can do all that in the December meeting. And then once we get to January, we're right back into real business. And we don't have to have a governing board meeting in January. That can just be an executive committee. The timing certainly works if everyone's going to be around.
Member Brokers, did you have a thought?
It was pretty much said, but I think, yeah, I definitely agree with the proposal here. I think we need to move it along. I think that was brought to the forefront very clearly at the commission meeting, Broward County Commission meeting.
Okay. Any other thoughts? So that kind of takes care of one.
So let's just talk through the mechanics of what we're talking about then, so we're all on the same page as an action plan. What we're saying is that we're going to communicate immediately with the cities that have vacancies to request that they, in their first meeting in December, choose a replacement member, and then we'll have that organizational meeting on the 20th, at which point we can choose the chair, the vice chair, as well as making sure the members are all there, that representing large, medium, and small. Is that correct?
Yes, the only thing I would change a little bit, it's not just the ones who have vacancies. I mean, cities can change their representatives anytime. So I think what we'll do is we'll tell the cities to tell us who their representative is going to be if it's changed. And if we don't hear, we'll say we are assuming there's no change. But each city can change their representative each year. So this will be their opportunity to do so.
And their alternate.
Yes, and they can.
Because
That's right.
Some did not appoint an alternate.
Right. So the only question would be, are we confirmed? We'll get that out quickly so that we don't have. And then particularly for the cities that have to appoint because of the vacancy, we need to have direct communications with city management staff, not just to the electeds, but throughout again, it should be the same email list to city management staff for everybody. Thank you.
Any other thoughts?
Real FYI, Parkland they did make the assignment at the meeting this past week, so Parkland's done.
Do they have both? And I know I'm asking that.
I think they just have the one.
So
The vice mayor.
So we need to make sure they also have an alternate.
Yes.
We have a, okay, good. Very good, thank you. Member Dunn.
Yeah, just to get some clarity on what you said, Jamie. So my city, for example, I'm already appointed for a 2-year term, and we already have an alternate that was reelected. So then my city would not get that notice, correct?
Well, you're appointed to a 2-year term on the executive committee.
Okay.
To be on the executive, you have to be on the governing board.
Okay.
Your city has the ability to change your governing board representative at any time. There's no term limit specifically. There's no, so I think the notice will go out to all the cities and it'll say, if you have a vacancy, you need to fill the vacancy. If you want to change your representative, please do so before December so-and-so.
So I think it's important, Jamie, to spell this out to every city.
Sure.
and let them know the time frame so that they're ready for December 20th.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think that it's important to, while it's important for cities to know that they can change, in my situation, for example, I am now a contingency of one. So we get to be a little bit mindful. So while it's important for us to make sure that everybody knows that they can change, but they don't need to change if you don't have to.
Right, we can put right in there and saying if we don't hear anything, if you don't take any action, your representatives will remain the same.
The default position.
Right, the default's going to be, it's just if you are filling a vacancy or if you are making a change, you need to tell us by that date. We'll word it that way.
Yes, thank you.
No problem.
Okay. All right, very good.
Just a related point on the bylaws. I know we were expecting a red line. Was that, if it was sent, I apologize, I must have missed it, but have we seen the red line yet that's going to be proposed?
Oh, we have it. Since it was not till January, we didn't send it out yet, but we'll send it out.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Okay, because that has to be done with the governing board, correct?
Yeah, the governing board in December will do that. I mean, the changes that we made, but I actually have the red line. We're very limited. We just changed the dates for the survey. The terms are from October to January instead of, and then we changed from 60 to 90 days to fill vacancies. And then the only other change we're making, it deals with the signing authority of checks, which we talked about, which will now say that the chair, together with the executive director, can sign checks in amounts in excess of $25,000. Before we had a different amount if it was between 25 and 100, and it was very difficult and it wasn't going to work. So we've made those changes. Other than that, it's very minor changes, and then we'll go out. We'll get those out this week.
Wouldn't we be able to vote on that? Because the governing board is going to have to be here to do that.
They're going to vote in December. We're going to have them do
So we can do the bylaws then.
Yeah, we're going to do the bylaws then.
We'll do both.
Because this group has already approved it. So it's really just a matter of presenting it to the governing board.
Okay. Everybody clear on that? Any last thoughts on it?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. All right, with that, we're going to go to Integrated Communication, Education, and Outreach Plan. We have
Okay.
about 15 minutes here.
Yeah, we're gonna keep running. We're gonna get on schedule. Real quick, this was in response to a request 2 meetings ago with regards to development of an integrated plan and show that how we're actually gonna work through what was approved in the budget for the $225,000 for the integrated for communication, outreach, and education. Today, we'd like to be able to put a small presentation to explain and go through where and how the $225,000 is expected to be expensed over the next time period. And we've put this plan together, this presentation together with and I want to say again, with the help of Member Dunn. She's been extremely helpful and available for us to be able to work through this and get a number of the questions in the right format so that marketing people understand what we're doing. So with that, I'd like to open it up right now. We have our public relations member here today, Lori, and Laura, I'm going to mess the last name up. Manicue.
Ernest Jones. You can use my married name.
To go through the presentation real quick that we presented this morning.
Absolutely.
We should go quick. Thank you.
Good morning.
One.
It's
Thank God I have glasses. Okay, perfect.
Good.
Do I have the ability to change the slides or no? Just
Just say
say,
when, yeah.
just say, okay, yeah, let's move it along. Thank you.
Laura,
Next
Laura,
slide.
If you can speak right into the mic.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me now? All right. All right, so here are our 4 phases of public outreach. Phase 1 is the branding and awareness, always going to be kind of ongoing. Phase 2 is really what we're going to talk about today, which is the obtaining the feedback for the master plan. Then you have your phase 3, which is when we're going to start educating. And then 4 is, yes, a little bit when the plan is being drafted, but mostly coming later. Okay, next slide. Thank you. So here's a breakdown of the 225. There's 25 in that phase 1. I'm going to talk mostly about phase 2, which is the 125 and the public outreach components that we're going to be focusing on between now and February. And then phase 3 is when we start educating, talking to the schools, and then we don't have a budget for phase 4 because it's just too far out at this point. All right, next slide. Here's how the 125 breaks down. So essentially we have 2 surveys going out to residents, and I'll show you how we're going to, distribute those and what that plan is. But there's 2 surveys for residents. There's 1 survey for businesses in Broward. Then we have focus groups planned. And then to kind of delve deeper into what the consultants learned from the surveys. And then you have your, MRFs and haulers touch base. They're going to do some work with them. And Todd, maybe you want to explain that
Sure.
component.
Sure, no problem. So what that is, we're trying to have interaction with the business community, business and institutions. We're trying to make sure that, say the Tourist Association or, a number of different interested community and business leaders have expressed their ability to work through that business plan.
The haulers, the MRFs and haulers specifically.
And, and we met with the haulers and we want to be able to understand their concerns as we roll this out, because ultimately we're going to be working with them in partnership with each of the cities, the jurisdictions, on this updated plan. We need to understand their limits. We understand their parameters, what they can do, offer for services. So it's really important that we understand their mechanism, their issues as we roll out the master plan. If we roll out something that they cannot do, or it's different than what they're able to do out on the street, we're not going to get a lot of support. So let's understand everyone's concerns, and not just the residents, but the business community.
Okay, so you're probably asking yourself, okay, what are the why 2 resident surveys? And I'm going to go through that, but you'll notice with survey 2, there's some other costs that are not for survey 1, like a phone poll, and then you have that focus group, those sessions that are going to focus on findings from both resident surveys. Okay, next slide, please. So here are the differences in the outreach items. Resident survey 1, which we're hoping to push out before December 1st, is really understanding how residents are disposing of waste and recyclables now. Then you have your second survey coming right after the holiday, which is understanding their future preferences. Any cost-related items are going to be in that survey. And the reason we want to do the phone polling around that survey is because we're hitting them twice. We want to make sure we hit our target sample sizes. And I'll go through that in just a minute to make sure everyone is in agreement there. Then you have your business survey after the holidays. They'll get kind of a dual survey, both components in one. Then you have the MRFs and haulers, and then you have your focus groups. Okay, next slide, please. So when we're talking about a representative survey, the consultant that's going to be evaluating this, that comes under Daniel's team, they want a sample size of 1,000. So all the materials we're putting out will be in 3 languages. 26% is the expectation for Spanish speaking, 6% for Haitian Creole, and then we also have some targeted marketing around lower income. And that's expected at 13% response rate. Next slide. So what are we doing? So here we're talking, you guys are all in your cities, you're gonna see a toolkit being sent out. So you're gonna have survey links, QR codes, flyers are already made. We've been filming videos, thank you, Chair Burr, thank you, Member Dunn. I think you're recording yours today. We're still waiting on Member Matea Bowen. She'll be recording a short video. These videos are meant, basically want to package everything so your city PIO or your team can just push it out through your channels. Everything will be You'll have flyers for your community boards. Everything will be in this toolkit in all 3 languages for you. In addition to pushing it out to the cities, we're going to do a media push. So we're going to target many publications here in town, all 3 languages. We're also going to reach out to community groups. Member Dunn, Commissioner Bowen, they've been wonderful at giving us some of these faith-based organizations. We have Hispanic Unity, the Urban League, all of the community organizations we brainstormed, going into your public outreach meeting in September. And then the last step to promote the survey is really geofencing with some digital targeting, the 6 zip codes that Member Dunn was so kind to provide to us that target the lower income households. Next slide.
Mr. Chair, I don't know whether we want to ask questions along the way.
Yes, I'm done.
If that okay?
Finished, yeah.
Okay. 2 things on
Yes.
the communication through media. If you go back to the previous slide, that'd be helpful for me. Just as a side note, going forward, I understand this may have been finished this morning, but it'd be really helpful to have this ahead of time,
Yes.
like any other slide, as part of the agenda, even if it's 24 hours ahead of time, just so that we have time to digest it, because I'm on the fly right now. Obviously, there's other culturally specific radio stations and communications. Is this list meant to be in what I think is category 2, meant to be complete or suggestive?
Yep, not all inclusive. This
Okay.
is just a spray of, we couldn't fit it all on there. But if
Okay.
you'd like to see the complete list, I'm happy to share it.
I would, thank you. Okay.
Absolutely.
Second, with respect to the zip codes, I appreciate, again, just to help me to understand the geofence,
Yeah.
and I'll just be parochial in it. Much of Sunrise is 33323, not 13.
Okay.
So I'm trying to understand how that got chosen and how are you geofencing only to 13, or help me to better understand?
Of course.
So that 13% response rate for lower income individuals, as you may know, Mayor, those 6 zip codes are the high unemployment zip codes in Broward County. And so those zip codes were chosen specifically to get the respondents from individuals who may fall under a certain.
Fair enough. Then
Yeah.
all that needed to be done is to amend the title to that this was intended to only reach the low moderate income as opposed to geofencing. I apologize.
Okay.
Thank you.
Member Bright Cruz.
Yeah, I wanted to follow, I think it was actually on the slide before this, but this survey number 2,
Yes.
when we're actually going out trying to see preferences for the future.
Yes.
I want to follow up on the comment that Debbie Green said earlier, referring to the why. And we had
Yes.
talked about that as a group, that the why was critical, that people may not want to do certain levels of recycling or different ways to deal with their waste until they understood that if they didn't do this, an incineration would come along or some other issue would come along. Are we planning on including that why in that survey or not? I mean, the questions that were initially sent out did not include that.
You haven't seen survey 2 yet. You've only seen survey 1. So survey 2 is still in development, and we will take that into account as we're developing and editing survey 2.
Okay, and I just a question to the board here. I mean, are we still comfortable with that? I mean, to me, that makes sense, but I want to make sure the board is comfortable with that as well. I mean,
With what?
I think what it changes people's response.
But it also makes the question somewhat biased.
Well, that's why I'm asking. That's why I'm asking. But I think it's important to get that information. I'm not a survey person, so I'm not here to say the exact wording. But what I am saying is that the response is going to be different if people realize the consequences of one answer versus the other answer. I'm not trying to steer. I want to get to the truth, but I think they need to understand the consequences of one answer versus the other. If we're gonna get the right information to make the right choice.
And to that point, anybody else want to talk yet?
Oh, we got 2 more.
Okay, I'll wait on this. Okay, I'll wait. I'll hold off on mine. Go ahead, AJ. Oh, Nancy. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see Nancy. Yeah, it's fine.
Thank you so much for putting this together. My question for you is, how are we avoiding duplicate responses? Is there a way for us to ensure that multiple folks in a household is not completing the survey? And two, distribution, are we going to have a text option? Because not most people have access to an email or use their email frequently. So just want to make sure that our sample sizes are accurate.
We can certainly look into an SMS push through the software that we're using. In response to your first question, it will limit IP address, but I don't always have the same opinion as my husband on things. So in typically marketing, we don't limit it based on household. There's not really a way to do that, but it will limit IP address. So you can't take it from the same device twice. You're welcome.
So my question was about the survey questions. Have we reviewed the survey questions? I know for the first survey, we had a few of them, but the second survey, you're still working on them?
The second survey, you have not seen that
Yeah.
yet. The first survey is what's been distributed a few times
Would
already.
you like to see it?
We can,
for us to
I can
look at?
send you.
Yeah, I think it would be,
No
So-
problem.
I think it'd be
what-
wise for the board to review the questions.
I think everybody would probably like to see that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing.
The surveys don't go out until you see them first.
So why don't we just ask for them?
Okay.
Why don't we make sure we see them before the December 20th?
Yeah.
And we all have a chance, now that we've all seen this, we have a chance to kind of look it over a little bit more, have some thoughts about it for the next meeting. And then.
But these are getting out before December 1st, right?
The one part about it is because and this is just me, but we don't have the master plan yet in terms of being able to reference that. And so we're asking surveys we're asking questions prior to having some of those determinants from the master plan. For instance, you're talking about why were you doing something? Well, that's presuming different things. You kind of want to make sure that the master plan is giving us a guide and then saying, would you do this to get to this point? So I kind of see, I don't want to jump over. I think there's a point, it's important to have that in front of us to be able to make those really poignant questions and directed to how do we accomplish this? And these are the steps that would accomplish. Would you agree with that? That's kind of where
Yeah, and if I can jump in there, I don't disagree with what you're saying at all. I do think that there's a process there that it is, and this was actually a comment I was going to make later on in the meeting. A month ago, I said I was disappointed because I hadn't seen any of the feedback on all the different alternatives that we originally heard about that we were going to be reviewing and deciding between and figuring out the pros and cons. And I was told that this was going to be the meeting where we would start talking about that. I'm looking at the agenda. It's still not there. I'm very, very concerned that we are this deep into the process and we haven't had meeting one talking about what we're actually going to do with the waste, what our plan is actually moving forward. I think that's, and I know I'm getting a lot of pushback from my residents. We haven't heard a word about that yet. So, but that goes to these questions is how can we put out that, I think that to put this survey out, the second one out, without being able to relate to the individuals that are responding to it, what the consequences are. This is our alternative. You can do this and have this consequence, or you can do this and have this consequence. It needs to be laid out there, because if it's just laid out to, do you want to spend more money to recycle? I already know the answer to that. I don't need to send a survey out for that. Okay? It's going to be, what is the consequence if we don't recycle, or we don't do this, or we don't do that? It's got to be in there. And I understand what you're saying, that now we're just kind of throwing, if we were to do it today, we would just be throwing things out there that we have no basis. We don't have the master plan to base it on to say this is really what your choice is.
Right.
So I agree 100% with what you're saying. So maybe the question is, number one, does the rest of the executive committee agree that that needs to be the way that second survey is sent out? And if so, what is the timing of it?
Okay. All right.
It's a very deep subject, right? Because how that's phrased, there may be folks who presented the option, and I'll just choose incineration. I know my own personal view is, but there may be those who say, would I choose incineration? Depends where it is.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure you want the answer to that.
Right.
Okay? Because that's not really the point, right? So I think we're not that, we just received the first white paper, if you will, that outlined what the assets are, both public and private. The analysis of that helps to inform what are our choices, where are our moats, where are landfills or properties that have appropriate code support and are classed and regulated for. So I think we're not quite there to what that looks like. I also think that, despite the public discussion that we're hearing about fears of constructing a new incinerator in Broward, I don't see that ever happening. So having a question about that almost doesn't seem to be that helpful, right? And I know your residents are very concerned about that,
right?
But I have not seen a momentum for that, right? So I want to be
for building
a brand new incinerator plant. That may be a choice that ultimately is had, but I don't even see that personally on the horizon, both as and I've said this before, financially, economically, socially, environmentally, public policy standpoint, it's not likely. So I want to be careful that we get a survey that's going to be helpful, that is funneling down to where our decision making is, because that's the purpose of a survey.
Right.
Right. It's not just to make us feel good about a decision we already think we're going to make, but it's to funnel down the tough decisions that we are. What are we?
Are we willing to ask our neighbors to pay it? And I think that's something that is going to need to come on the horizon. And if we're going to put forth alternatives, then there should be a cost with those alternatives.
Member Schumer.
So, Laurie, I want to understand the goal of Survey 2. What's the objective?
So Daniel, so these two surveys are really meant to help develop the master plan. What questions the team needs answered now, what feedback they need to help get that plan together by April. We can always do another one, post-draft master plan. We're not just limited to these two. It can be, if we need more public outreach at any point, we're going to do it. But survey 1 is really about how they're using solid waste, how they're using their system now. Are you putting for example, your yard waste on the curb?
Yes.
Yeah, or are you hauling it somewhere?
So
we want to understand their use habits, essentially.
And Survey 2, what types of questions did you anticipate before today?
Survey 2 is more about cost, maybe looking ahead into, hey, if we all were better with our food waste and separating it, composting, it could lead to this. Would you be willing to? Right? So more preferences going forward.
So my takeaway from all of this is that Survey 2 would need to be much simpler.
Yes.
In the sense of, just like Mayor Ryan was saying about where things are going to be placed. We have open issues on landfill space now. It seems to me the kinds of questions that would be useful are very general. Would you be willing to pay more monthly to improve the environment, or something very high level? And beyond that, it's so detailed and so many alternatives. I think that we're almost wasting the time and the energy on the survey. We're going to get 1,000 responses to questions that are very scientific that even this group hasn't been given the backup for. I agree with Steve. We don't know what we want to do yet. So how can we ask this select group of residents what they want? They don't have the information either. So to me, I don't think that it's a useless effort, but I think it should be a much higher level about what you're willing to pay, maybe what you're willing to do as far as, would you be willing to separate into 4 bins if
Right.
that was going to result in a cost savings? Very general behavioral changes versus what's happening to the garbage.
Yes.
Member Dunn. Did you want to speak?
So thank you for that, Member Shuham. I think that's a really wise approach. So I think if we look at the market research as one building on top of the other. So in the first round, it's just general. What are you doing now? How do you feel about it? Just general, getting a baseline. And then in the second round, being able to ask questions that would ascertain people's willingness to change their behavior, because there's going to be opportunity costs for everybody, right? Whether it's an opportunity cost in terms of money or an opportunity cost in terms of time, or sometimes change can be challenging, right? So in the way that I'm seeing it, in the second survey, we now get to take some of the information that we got from the first survey to see where maybe there's some patterns, where there's some trends, and then really target the second one to figure out how willing people are to change, what their investment would be in kind of creating a more economic, more environmentally sustainable Broward County. And then now, for the focus groups, we're going to get people in the room that we can then kind of dig into some of these more targeted type of responses. And I think at that point, by then, hopefully we'll have some idea as to what the data is telling us, and they can craft the questions in a way that can give us some deeper insights. That's my understanding of, is that an accurate reflection?
Yes.
And then the other thing too that I would want to present us to is the timing of it all, right? So maybe, if possible, we can, if we have time on the agenda at some point today, maybe we can just take a glance at the first survey, because the intent is to get that out in another week. So timing is really important.
Timing's important. We're going into the holiday time. So the idea was, yes, we would give a little bit of a longer lead time for this survey to make sure we hit the 1,000, because we don't have the fail safe, the phone polling that we're going to have with the second, because we only have budget to do that one time.
Right.
Do you have a sample of the first survey right now?
We have this first survey. I would like to probably make some tweaks after having a late call yesterday with one of the consultants that's analyzing the data on it. They want a few more qualifiers in there. So I'd like the opportunity to do that after this meeting, and maybe Todd can circulate it to all of you. We're not going to put it out till y'all review it.
And this group has seen the
Yes.
draft a number of times. They've
Yes.
seen a couple of emails come out from me with regards to that. So no problem, we can make these revisions and work through that on the first one.
And we could have another crack at this. Now we've seen this at the December 20th meeting, make it solid.
So-
I know, trying to
But
get
she's
things
trying
out.
to get it out in a week.
I know.
So
That's just that first one. I think really a lot of questions were with regards to the second one.
correct me if I'm wrong, but that first one really sets the tone and kind of gather the baseline, right?
And I think the first one, with a couple of the tweaks that we're going to do, that it meets everything that everybody's talked about with regards to that.
Okay, so everybody's comfortable with the first one? Because
Well, you can see it.
remember,
We'll get
Bright
it out
Cruz, it
one more
sounded to
time.
me like you maybe,
I mean, yeah, I had some concerns about it, but frankly, I'll be honest with you, I didn't realize there was a second one coming along. So
Oh,
if that's
okay.
just for the first one,
Got
then
it,
then
got it.
I'm okay.
Okay, I'm gonna do 2 more questions. We have a lot to cover.
Yeah,
And
just,
this is something I think we're gonna want to come back to.
okay,
Member
I'll be
Cruz.
brief. I agree 100% with what you both just said. I think that's awesome, and I think that makes sense. I want to go back to, though, I think what we're going to, so that will help us to understand where we are as we build the master plan. But going back to what Mayor Ryan said earlier, I do think that once the plan is there, it's going to be critical for us to go back out again. I hate to say it, but a third survey to be able to understand, okay, now we know the plan. How are our constituents going to react to that plan? And what is the best way for us to communicate? I hate to say sell, but I'm going to say sell it to it so that it gets accepted and it becomes something that is viable and that we can really move forward with.
And to that point, I think part of what's going on with the surveys and this general awareness campaign is a slow buildup to an awareness across the county. Here's what's going on. Here's why we're doing this. Here's what all the thoughts are. So, I mean, it needs to build that way so that when the plan does come out, people are like, where'd this come from? You know, that's the important part.
If I can, Mr. Chair, let me just say this. I like what Mayor Breakthrough said about the third survey. What I would suggest is that we may not, I think there's a danger in the second survey. If you go out before we even know whether we're willing to do, let's compost it. And we ask the question, people say, no, I'm not interested. I've read all this stuff. I'm just not interested. I don't want to do it. I'm not willing to pay a dime for it. What is the purpose of that for us? When the legislature said that we should, by 2020, have 75% recycling rate, they didn't do it based on a survey. We didn't meet it based on a survey. We set a goal, and we said we're going to do this, and it didn't happen. What we're doing here as a body and as a governing board is we're supposed to be developing the plan and then educating why it's so important. We're all represented. We represent our constituencies, and we're saying we understand what their value judgments are. If you ask some people, hey, if you had a choice between incineration and a landfill, they may say incinerator. If you ask them, are you willing to spend $2 billion and put it in your backyard? Hell no. So the question isn't what is the value judgment? What are we trying? They haven't educated. To your point, Mr. Chair, the slow buildup to the survey is ultimately once we have the guts of a master plan. Between now and then, we should be educating. The communication plan should be educating, not just doing surveys where we haven't even educated yet. We educate in our own little areas, but when you go across the country, there's going to be plenty of places that are going to say, I'm not willing to spend another dime to recycle. I'd rather you just burn it. I don't care. Is that going to influence this body as we set out for 40 years of sustainability? The answer is no. We're going to have to figure some other judgments out. So what I would suggest is there needs to be a discussion as to whether this Survey 2 should be done at this early stage where we haven't, I tried to read the white paper. There's a lot of assets here. I have not fully digested what it means. And if you sent me a survey and I answered it, it would be without the benefit of even understanding what our physical assets are and what our capacity is with private. So to build in the value judgments that I think are going to be necessary, to understand what the direction we'll want to be, should be after two things. One, where we're at least close and with an eyesight of the master plan and what we know our assets are and what our value judgments are going to be. And two, after we've educated as to why this is such an urgency. The most education we've gotten on a landfill is because it's come forward and it's been in the press. A lot of people who didn't have any idea that this was even an issue. They don't know what's going in the dump. They don't know what the discussion is. They don't know about the 6-year or whatever the timeline is. And that's education. Mm-hmm. If we survey them before they even read the article on that, they may have a different view. So I like that I want to move forward as quickly as possible. I want to get, but that's what our job is. We're supposed to be representing the constituency and understanding and with the governing board saying what are some of those, but until we have the value, I couldn't even ask my colleagues on the commission what they would like to do because I don't know what we're visioning yet. So I would suggest before we even get to phase 2, because if you get the wrong answer, and I say wrong in that it doesn't reflect the assets we have, it doesn't reflect our vision, it doesn't reflect what we need to do on sustainability, what are we going to do? We're going to tell people we rejected 60% of what the people said? That's our own fault because we didn't educate yet. So I would just offer that to the body to reconsider before we get to that survey 2, that we have the right information, that we've already educated on these value judgments, and even telling people what the assets are that are out there. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry for going on so long.
Those are all good points, Mayor Ryan. I think the opportunity with the second survey is for us to identify the pain points. And so perhaps the medium is for us to be very intentional about the types of questions that we want to craft, and maybe even reframing the goal and purpose of the second survey. I think a second survey could be very useful in not only helping us to understand people's willingness to change their behavior, but also for us to identify the pain points so that when we do develop the education campaign, that we're able to do so in a way that's targeted, that's going to address specifically what the pain points are. So for example, if we have a thought that maybe we want to, let's just say composting, for example, and the survey reveals that people are not necessarily willing to take that route, and we know that that's something that we want to do, then in the education campaign, we know that that's an area that we have to really be very focused and targeted in because it's a pain point. So that's why I think a second survey is important. But again, perhaps we just need to be more intentional about the types of question and the goal of the second survey.
Let me just say, I appreciate that, and I think that's a really good point. I think it's a matter of timing. And I think getting that pain point too early, if you get people to answer, I'm not willing to compost, we're now going to try to educate them out of their own value judgments they've made. They've said, I'm not interested. And now you're going to try to educate me? I think we've all agreed from the beginning, our education should already be going on now, what we're facing, what the crisis is. When I speak of the crisis, people still don't understand it, right? Of what we're dealing with solid waste, of where we're going to go. And I think the pain point is going to come when we're saying maybe composting is not going to be part of the master plan as a system. It may be like Coral Springs is doing or others are doing. They're figuring, I don't know. But to ask that question now and then to start breaking it out, either by geofence or just how we know we can harvest data, I may find 33323 is completely disinterested and 33151 is all on board. What does that do for us, right? But I agree that ultimately the survey and the timing of that has got to feed an educational plan why we've made these choices. I just fear if we go too early, then we're going to have to educate people out of what they believe are their current beliefs without having the information.
Todd?
Okay, real quick, we got to get back on track. So great comments, everybody. We're going to take those into account. The member done, I know she doesn't know. But real quick, by December 30th, all right, you saw a couple of the white papers come out recently, all right, we're actually, and I mentioned this a couple of other meetings, we were in the lull. You didn't really see that we were making progress. You will start seeing these white papers on a regular basis so that everybody has the background and the information so they can make educated decisions going forward. As far as the alternatives, today we needed to start with regards to the characterization and get in and have everybody really, and this, including the team here, everyone present, what our problem is. This is the scope of the problem. That's a start, and that's where we'll be here in a few minutes. That's the next presentation. But with regards to the surveys, we can always have an additional survey. We can work through this. It's not just 2 and done or 3 and done. We can have as many surveys as we think that's appropriate with the team. We can even actually another meeting just about surveys if you would like. So we want to take that into account. We want to be able to do this and meet your expectations.
Super quick.
We're gonna,
Really quick. I just think if there's a benefit to be had from the second survey, I think to Mayor Ryan's point, the question has to be asked and answered in a way that we're not contradicting the decisions of residents. So a simple question, are you familiar with composting? Do you know the benefits of composting? Something like that will get you to the pain point maybe without us later going back and contradicting it.
Those are, I think those are the good kind of questions because we're still doing garbage 101.
Yep.
We're definitely doing, I mean, I've found this out through the whole discussion on landfill. People are like, wow, I didn't know any of this or this or this or this. And we are definitely still on the ground floor on educating the public as to what happens with this stuff. So I'm gonna suggest this goes to the next agenda because we have a ton of stuff we got to get to. And part of it is, we're gonna learn a lot in the next part. So let's hold off on it. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Suggest a subcommittee to maybe.
Oh, that may be a good idea.
Yeah, start drafting something for us to then as a body discuss.
Let's bring this up near the end for the new, okay? Thank you. Okay, so with that, we're going to go on to the waste generation presentation. And this is what the solid waste working group that was established back in, I think it was 2018. Could be wrong on that. Seems low. Seems like a while. Maybe a little past that. Had asked all 30 of the 31 cities joined in this to find out what's in our garbage, how much of what's in it. And so they did sample sizes or samples from all over the county. And we have, this is the presentation. Did everybody get a copy of this? The large copy of it? Yes? No? Well, it's the waste characterization study. If they didn't, I want to make sure everybody gets that.
The characterization was
Yes, this.
distributed a few months ago.
Okay, just make sure. Okay.
Yes.
And that's what this is based on. So I'm going to pass this over. And who's doing this?
This is SES, so it's actually online.
Okay.
SES is online with regards to working in coordination with the county.
Okay.
And I don't know. And I'm not sure if the county wanted to actually say anything ahead of time, but that might be open for some comments afterwards. I think online right now we have the SES team that has actually been responsible for the characterization.
Kevin?
Yeah, hi.
Okay. Let me have Kevin introduce it real quick.
Sorry. Good morning, Kevin Kelleher, Assistant County Administrator, Broward County. As you know, it's a long time coming. We engaged SES to do a waste generation and waste characterization study. They did all their sampling and we got the results of the waste characterization study, and that is how much is recyclable, how much is not recyclable, how much is municipal garbage, how much is bulk, what makes up the garbage. That was completed and forwarded to this committee back in June. So now we're at the second half of that, the waste generation study, which is how much is generated by the community. And so we have Stacy Demers from SES, who's going to give you a presentation on both reports, and we'll walk you through the trials and tribulations that got us to where we're at here today. But she's going to give you the background and give you all the information that will help guide the next stage, which is the master plan. These are important steps that will help the master planning process, which is also being done by SES.
Okay.
So with that, take it over, Stacy.
All yours, Stacy.
Okay.
The floor is yours.
All right, thank you. I'm going to share my screen with
Can we make this louder?
Okay. Yeah.
We're trying to make it
I was going to
louder
check
here.
if you can hear me. Okay. Let me share. And can everyone see the presentation?
Okay,
Yeah.
now you can hear.
We were starting to hear it a little bit louder.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll just talk till you guys can hear me well.
That's getting better. Can everybody hear okay? Okay, all right, we're good.
Okay, and you can see the presentation, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, my name is, just a quick introduction. My name is Stacy Demers. I'm a vice president with SES. I've been working with SES for over 30 years. And during that time, I have done hundreds of waste characterization studies, just like this one for Broward, and also not as many because they're not as common, but also several waste generation studies. So I'm going to go over this right now. And we're going to start with talking about the waste composition study. So why do we do these wastes? What's the purpose? And it's good information. It informs you what materials are in your solid waste stream, your recycling stream. We take that data. What we do is we go in the field, we take samples, we sort it into the different material categories over and over. That data is assembled, averaged, summarized, and that gives us a good idea of what's in the waste stream. We use the data. We like to analyze, the types of materials that we're seeing in the waste stream. When we're looking at waste, which is, for landfill disposal or waste energy disposal. We also look at recycling contamination, the amount of material that should not be in recycling, and then, potential commodities. And these are things that might be in the waste stream that could have been pulled out. There's a program for it. We recycle, but they're commodities that had value that were put in the trash. Okay, So this describes the waste streams we looked at. I mentioned source separated recyclables. Now source separated just means someone separated them and put them in a recycling bin or recycling dumpster so that they could be collected. They aren't pulled out of the trash. This is source separated, collected by haulers specifically to take to a material recovery facility. So we worked with Reuters Recycling, and I'm just going to mention. So we were at their facility, and that's a transfer facility. Haulers direct haul the collected recyclables to their transfer station in Deerfield Beach. Then recycling is aggregated. All that material is aggregated, residential and commercial, into a transfer trailer and brought to the Reuters Recycling facility. That's where we were allowed to sample. So therefore, what we looked at recycling is we couldn't come up with a composition for residential versus commercial. This is recycling in the county, and it's all combined. Next, we looked at municipal solid waste. This is waste that's destined for disposal, not for recycling. So landfill or waste energy. What's interesting is we worked at the North Broward transfer station. We were able to target residential trucks versus commercial trucks. So we were able to identify profiles for residential versus commercial. So, and I'll explain that later in the presentation. We also looked at construction and demolition debris and bulky materials. And these are typically, when we talk about bulky loads, we're talking most of the time about residents who do their own project, or maybe they want to get rid of a couch and some bulky items in their waste stream. They can't put it in their regular trash carts, so they bring it to the landfill. So this is separate. We don't hand sort this material. We look at loads. It's something called visual characterization. So we were at the Broward County landfill, and we were making visual characterization, looking at loads as they come in, noting the materials and the presence of the different materials in these loads. And what you could see right here, these, I just kind of summarized it. These are the locations we went to. So when you're looking at the map of the county, the communities that are identified on this map are the communities that take waste to the North Broward transfer station. The North Broward transfer station, I know, is not existing anymore, but at the time, that's the place that we were allowed to sort and sample the waste stream. We had wanted to go to the South Broward. They probably had a little bit more range, but the problem is there was no safe area for us to conduct this field work. So we were at the North Broward, and so that gave us a good indication. We spent a lot of time there. We did 4 seasons. So that there's no seasonal bias towards the waste stream. And if you look over there on the left, it tells you that the recycling, we got 50 samples, the trash 135. And when I say for MSW, there is an ASTM standard for doing a waste characterization study. And so we followed that, and each of those samples are 200 pounds, at least 200 pounds. So I think I recorded, we sorted over 30,000 pounds of trash, and we sorted 8,400 pounds of recycling. And the C&D bulky loads are characterized by 252 loads that we've made visual characterization details on and assembled that data. We look at it, the volume, and then we convert it to a weight, and so we can look at the composition of that material. We looked at these, when we get all this material together, all the data, we classify these materials, by how they can be diverted. Okay, when I say diverted, I mean diverted from disposal. And so we have recyclable materials, and you'll see those later on in the presentation. Recyclable materials are what you can put in your recycling cart, okay? Typically it involves various paper grades, cardboard, mixed paper, magazines, office paper, things like that. Plastic containers, usually 1s and 2s, and some other containers by resin, and then glass, and then aluminum cans and steel cans. So those are typically recyclable. Compostable is typically food waste or food scraps. We look at yard trash, and oftentimes we can put compostable paper. It's like a low-grade paper, like paper towels, oftentimes can be put in compostable. Then we look at potentially divertible. And when I'm talking, it's not necessarily something you could put in your recycling cart, but you can divert it from landfill disposal. And this includes things like retail plastic bags. Oftentimes the retail stores take them back. It involves household hazardous waste, which the county has a program to collect hazardous waste, or electronics, or sometimes it could be textiles, because textiles can be taken to perhaps thrift stores or things of that nature. And there are other processes where they can, sell textiles and process textiles for reuse. So those are potentially divertible. And then we have other materials that we really don't have a market for. These are materials oftentimes they're small materials. After you've sorted everything out, it might be some coffee grounds mixed with some kitty litter with paper clips and straw coverings or little plastic caps. It is something that is not put in the other categories. It also could be something that we don't see, like a bowling ball, a ripped up tent, a car bumper or something like that. So that ends up being, even though the car bumper probably could have been put in scrap metal, but these are things that we don't really have a program for. So they are right now the best opportunity we have is to dispose them. So I'm going to start by talking about source separated recycling and what it looked like. And when you look at this picture on the left, that's how it was coming in the transfer trailer. That right there is a single load brought in, a large transfer trailer brought in of recyclables, and it is emptied onto the floor. So we would randomly go collect a sample of this several times a day. When the load came in, they confirmed to us that it was all Reuters Recycling was pretty good. They made sure to only get material that came from within Broward County. They transferred it in special trailers, all Broward County material, and it came to Reuters Recycling. And so there's the tipping floor, and you see on the right, you can see what it looks like, our sorting operation. We would have about 6 people sit around a table. The sample would be put onto the table. We would sort it into various categories, into different containers, and then we would weigh all the containers, separating out the tare weight of the container. So we get weights for all the different materials. And looking at this, you can see this is a pie graph that describes the composition of the recycling. And what's nice is, you see, well, in recycling, 66 over 2/3 of the material they get through the program is actual recyclable. You can see potentially divertible. There's some plastic right there. It's 0.6%, and that was just plastic bags. Those are the retail bags that are divertible through retail stores. So those are, we don't want those. The MRF doesn't really want those in the recycling. So it's a bit of a contaminant. And then you can see non-divertible. These are just things that should not have been put in recycling. Sometimes it could be food. Sometimes it could just be trash. And so you have a contamination rate here of about 33% when you add the potentially divertible and non-divertible materials. So sometimes people think, oh, that's a terrible rate. And I would say, yeah, that's not good. We'd like to bring the rate down. But in my experience, I have found contamination rates in some places as low as 10. Oftentimes, I would say the average is in the low 20s. But I have seen other communities that have contamination of 50% or more. So I would say that, yeah, maybe, this is not such a bad contamination rate, but it would be really helpful if we could get some more education, and try to get this rate to come down. And then over on the right, that just tells you, when we're looking at the percentage of materials, and this is all by weight, these are the materials that we find in the greatest quantity, the individual materials. The pie graph are sort of the general paper, plastic, but if we look at the individual materials, we can see that corrugated cardboard is 19%. So that's the largest commodity in recycling. So if you look at where it says fiber, 42.3%. Well, 19.2% of that quantity is corrugated cardboard, and then mixed paper is 11.6. So those are represented in the greatest quantity. You see glass containers 8.9, PET bottles, and then magazines. So all those, the top materials are all recyclable materials that should have been put in the recycling bin. And I'm going to talk a little bit about municipal solid waste. This is material that's collected by private haulers. We targeted 2 streams, residential versus commercial. And you can see, these are the categories. What you see on the far left, that's when we get the sample and put it together in a container before it gets put on a table. The middle picture, you can see that's a table, and you can see all of our sorters around the table. They concentrated certain material types, and then they sorted into these trash cans. We have SES personnel who are going around making sure everything is sorted correctly, seeing if there's any questions. A lot of times when you're looking at waste materials, sometimes it's easy to make a mistake where it should go. And then on the far right, you can see that was a special category of medicines. So that's what it might look like in the container. We put the medicines, and then we weigh it at the end of when we finish sorting the sample. And so we're looking right now at the residential waste stream, okay? So this is material that is put into the trash, so it's going into the landfill or the waste to energy facility. And so you could see quite a large portion of that are recyclable materials, 30.5%. Those are materials that could have been put in a recycling bin. They could have had a value, but instead they are finding their way in the trash. Compostable, we split out between the food waste, yard trash, and paper. You can see compostable, 34%, and then potentially divertible. Those are the things like some C&D materials. When I say organic, that's mostly textiles and some clean wood, plastics that like retail plastic bags that had potential to be diverted, and then others. So potentially divertible, about 13.4, and then non-divertible, 21.5. So the thing to take away from this is that about 78%, the blue, green, and orange, are materials that could have been diverted away from disposal. The top materials here, food waste, that's very common in residential trash, yard waste, those are the things that aren't recyclable or compostable, mixed paper, and textiles. And the interesting part is textiles. 5.7% of the residential waste stream are textiles. And this is interesting. It's really only happened recently, maybe in the last 5 to 7 years, where textiles has found its way to the top material. This is something I've seen in other communities as well. I don't know if it's people don't want to donate anymore. I don't know if it's fast fashion or something in our culture, but textiles is now becoming increasingly prevalent in the residential waste stream. Okay, and then this is the commercial. You can see it's not that different from the residential, but when we look at what's recyclable and compostable and divertible. But the thing that's kind of interesting, food waste is also pretty high in the commercial waste stream. You could see the third highest component is corrugated cardboard, 8.7% of what's put in the trash. And so that's different from residential. Residential cardboard didn't make it to the top 5. Only about 4.2% of 4.5% of the residential waste stream was corrugated cardboard. So either the residents are recycling more, or they just don't have as much cardboard in their waste stream. So cardboard is is something I usually see in larger quantities in commercial waste. And so we have mixed paper. The other interesting thing is yard trash made it up to 5.8%. So that's interesting. Normally, I don't see the commercial sector having much. So this could be a function of contractors, landscape contractors, who instead of taking the material away like they should, are putting it into the dumpsters of the sites they're servicing. I don't know, but oftentimes when I see this much yard trash and commercial waste, that's often, what my clients think is happening. And then we're looking at C&D and bulky waste. And you can see this is oftentimes construction to be, it could be a cleanup of a yard. You can see on the right, it looks like some, plastics, bulky plastics, and there's a basket and maybe a little small dresser there. So that's an example of bulky waste. So these are loads they dump at the Broward County landfill, and our staff would walk around and characterize the types of materials they would see, the relative proportions, and then we took the data to come up with an idea of what we're seeing. And you can see a lot of orange. There's a lot of things that can be done. There are materials that are mixed up in mixed loads, but if they had been separated, or if there was more of a program, they could have been diverted from disposal. And so one of the large components you can see of the general C&D category is asphalt roofing, 25.7. And that's, many other communities have recycling programs for asphalt roofing, especially if they come in a single load. Clean engineered wood is 13.2%. That's another component of general C&D. Treated wood, we don't usually see that as once it's treated with paint or pressure treated or something like that, it's really not compostable and it's really not recyclable. So that's a tough material. And then brick and concrete are items we often see that can be crushed for aggregate and recycled. So there's a lot of potential for diverting material that, C&D materials and bulky materials. It's also good to note, it's not a lot of organics coming into the waste stream in terms of yard trash or food waste. So it's really a lot of C&D and wood. And so, potential programs could be developed that would divert some of this material.
Mr. Chair, I just have a quick question. Where was that site that was evaluated for C&D bulky?
Oh, the Broward County landfill?
I thought at Big okay. Not doing any diverting at this time from there. It's just being piled in there.
I believe so. And so we looked at, some recommendations looking at this material. And looking at the waste characterization study, some of our recommendations would be to improve recycling behavior, some more education. If you remember, I said there was about 33% contamination in the recycling. So more education about what materials can and cannot be put in recycling would be helpful. Reduce recyclables in trash. I think you're seeing that, 30.5% of residential, 32.7 of commercial material is things that could be easily recycled, and they're instead putting in the trash. So help do things, maybe media campaigns that could help influence people's behavior to put it into recycling, or look at obstacles there that prevent people from putting in recycling. Composting. In the county, there's a lot of opportunity to compost materials that are now putting into disposal. Similar to recycling, it's a little bit more, it's about a third of residential waste and about 28.4% of commercial waste. So that would improve diversion. C&D diversion, I think you saw a large percentage of the C&D materials could have been diverted through different recycling programs that could be developed. And then we also recommend periodic waste composition studies. That helps you evaluate the effect of any program you develop. You can also see trends in the waste stream, and you can, adapt your programs to change accordingly. So I thought I'd just pause here because next I'm going to go in the waste generation study, and I want to see if there are any particular questions on the waste composition study. All right. So hearing none, I'll move on. The waste generation study. So the two studies are very different. The waste composition tells you what's in your waste stream and the relative proportions of material that's in your waste stream. What we do a waste generation study for, the purpose, we're trying to look at a basis for a non-ad valorem assessment. Non-ad valorem means it's not based on property value, but rather it's based on your impact to the solid waste system. So for instance, larger generators, if you're generating a large amount of waste, then you should have a greater say or a greater fee for your impact to that system. Conversely, if you're a smaller waste generator, you should have a smaller, so your fees should be different. And your neighbor, Palm Beach County, has had a system that assessed people's waste generation. They have a solid waste fee, a non-ad valorem assessment. And so this is modeled, what we looked at, it's modeled by your neighbor in Palm Beach County. But a big thing is it's a way to get revenue, and it's a way for it to be equitable at the same time, since larger generators would pay more of the fee. So you would have a fee based on on the tax bill oftentimes, and it would be based on the waste generation. And the waste generation is based on the type of business and the size of the business. So this is a way for you to, it's a very equitable way to get fees to pay for your system, rather than simply adjusting the solid or the tipping fee at your disposal sites. So one thing excuse me. So this study looked at regular trash, okay? We did not look into bulk trash or construction and demolition or yard waste. Those are streams we didn't look into because usually there's a separate way to manage these. We're looking at waste that is destined for disposal at the landfill or the waste energy facility. And so the process of doing this. So it's a waste generation study, and the idea was that, and I've done these studies for 20 years, and I would say in the early days, we used to manually go to dumpsters, empty a whole dumpster, weigh all its contents, fill it up. We would have to, make contact with every site, get permission to be on their property, find out when their trash is collected, try to come right before it. It was very labor intensive. These studies could be over $1 million back in the early 2000s. So, but they've evolved, and in other places, what we've done, and we did this in Broward, a better idea is to get participation from a hauler, okay, who will allow you, to purchase a scale, an onboard scale that can measure the contents, the weight of the contents within the dumpster, and it could be done during normal collection times. So that is something we've done in other, up in Montgomery County, Maryland. We also, that was our idea to get some participating haulers who would get a scale, special scale put on their truck, and then allow us to ride along with them and record the weights of that of the waste disposed by their customers during normal collection time. So field sampling, I'm going to talk about all these a little bit later. And then once that's all done, you've coordinated with them, you have an idea which route you're going to do, you procure a scale. There's a lot of you have a vendor come in to procure, install the scale, which normally takes a day or two. So you coordinate that, then all of a sudden you're ready. And so we rode along for 35 days. The idea was to go 7 routes. A route is usually what they can do. They consider a route, over the course of a week, Monday through Saturday. So we rode these trucks for 35 days in different parts of the county and recorded the weight of material that was put in dumpster for disposal, and then aggregated all of that. But once you get that data and you have your customer, you try to match that customer to a parcel in the database. And you use that database, you want to match it up because you want to get the land use, right? Because you're going to decide this charge is going to be based on the land use code. And then it's also going to be based on the size of the business, the square footage. So they need to be correlated to get those two ideas. And then when you finally correlate, all the customers with a particular parcel, and I'll get into some of the issues later in this presentation, but that is a very long and tedious process. And once you feel satisfied with that, you create your waste generation rates. And the waste generation rate is something that's pounds per square foot per year of trash generated. All right, so one of the first steps was to coordinate with the haulers, I think I said. And this took a lot of time because it's natural for haulers to be worried. They don't necessarily like someone to come in and know their customers, know the way they route the system, even know how much these individual businesses throw away, because there could be a competitive advantage, if this information were to get out. So we signed non-disclosure agreements with each of them that we would present the data in aggregate, so it couldn't be traced back to a particular customer of theirs. So that's part of the agreement. We also made an agreement that they would allow the onboard scale, to be installed on their collection vehicle for the study, and so that was part of it. And then once that was done, they did not want to give us their entire customer database, but they would give us the customers, information about the customers on a particular route. And so we would tell them which types of routes we wanted, types of businesses we wanted, a wide variety of commercial businesses. And they would select a route, give us the information for that particular route. And then we would have a small database, and then a person would ride the truck. And typically these, we'd have to be at the site, at the hauler site, to meet the driver around 2 a.m. And these haulers in Broward work very hard. They usually, a 10-hour day is pretty typical for them. So we rode along in the vehicle with them for 10 hours. And like I mentioned, 35 days. So, and then kind of coordinating with them, oftentimes it's in the dark, but coordinating, are we at this customer on our database, and recording the weights, looking around to see if that property had any dumpsters that maybe he didn't collect, and trying to figure out if that's something, you could have a route, you could have a property with multiple businesses. Some business, like a restaurant, may get collected every single day of that week, whereas you might have another retail store that might only get collected once a week. So keeping track of the dumpsters and the customers, and then trying to make sure that later on know enough information so we could match all these businesses to particular parcels. So there are two aspects to doing a waste generation study. We did a residential a waste generation rate, and then we're looking at a commercial waste generation rate. Now, the residential waste generation rate, it was decided that we would do this based on information that was provided. Usually it's provided by haulers to the individual municipalities. And so we would get the nearest year's worth of data they had. It could be the most recent fiscal year, the most recent calendar year, but we would aggregate the tonnage of waste that was collected, divide it by the number of households, and get the average tons per household per year. So that's how our residential system worked. But as you know, some residential condominiums are also collected, or apartments are collected by commercial haulers, because they use the kind of truck with the front forks. They service dumpsters. Typically, the commercial sector is serviced by dumpsters. So what you see in any of these communities in red text, there were 4 communities for which the hauler allowed us to ride 1 or more routes. In Davie, we were allowed to ride 4 routes, and then the other 3 communities, Pompano Beach, Miramar, and Oakland Park. Oakland Park allowed us to ride a single route. So just that was a good, that's the way the waste is distributed. I'm going to talk a little bit about the scale. The scale, these are new recent technology. Loadman, I think, is one of the leaders in this. I've worked with them before, but they make a scale. If you see this truck, you can see it. The hauler doesn't have to do anything special for the scale to work. You know, they put their forks in the side of this dumpster, and it's weighing a full dumpster on the way up. It empties its material, and then it weighs the empty dumpster on the way down. Subtract gross from net, or gross from tare, and you get the net net quantity of waste that was in that dumpster. What you see on the left hand of the screen is it's a tablet that sits in the cab of the vehicle. It puts the weight, you know, the gross weight and then the tare weight of the dumpster right there, and then also presents the weight of the refuse in that dumpster. And I was just going to say, we picked this because it didn't require any special operation by the waste collector. You know, as I mentioned, they have 10-hour days. It's a full day. They don't want anything to slow them down. So we could write in there, and then we could observe the tablet, and then we would record all of the weights that showed for each of the customers. Just so you know, I mean, there's, you know, these haulers in Broward work really hard. There are often times that the trucks need maintenance or they have breakdowns. For each of these haulers, they had pretty much one truck. You know, one hauler had two trucks outfitted with a scale, but the trucks sometimes break down, and then, you know, sometimes there could be a little glitch with the scale we'd have to get fixed. So field work happened from November 2022 all the way through June 2023. So it was, you know, a good 8 months there where we're gathering data, and our schedules adjusted by maintenance schedules, or they may be particularly busy and not want us, or maybe the truck is out of commission for a little while. So it took a while to coordinate all of these. Sometimes we might spend a half day recording weights, and the truck may break. We try to come back for the second half of another day. You know, if it was a Monday, we come back on another Monday when it's working. The idea was to, you know, look at the businesses collected through the course of a week. Ride-alongs for 35 days, and so we were able to measure 1,100, just about 1,200 properties. Now, there are more customers, but sometimes there are multiple customers for a single property. So these are properties, almost 1,200 properties measured, had their waste quantity measured. I mentioned a big part of this is matching the customer into the parcel database. And I mentioned to get the land use code and building size, but it also helped us develop use code groups. So there's like over 100 land use codes in the Broward County Property Appraisers database, but they were grouped into similar types of practices, oftentimes with similar waste generating practices. So we developed special use code groups that we put these into for all businesses. So, you know, just to describe a little bit why it's difficult to match a customer to a property in the database is, for instance, you know, if we look over here, the single property with multiple tenants, each tenant can have their own dumpster, their own collection frequency, and it happens multiple times in a week. So aggregating all those, making sure that they're all on the same contiguous parcel, and then aggregating that into a total amount of waste generated at that property for a week. In the case of condos, you can see multiple properties share a single waste contract. So when you have an address for where they're going for that dumpster, and it may just be with, you know, they may have the property manager's name, so not necessarily, you know, so you don't necessarily know from the name that it's a bunch of residential condos, But when you look at the parcels, you use Google Earth, you take notes from our rider during the ride along, all combined, you realize that it's a single dumpster for a multiple properties. And so there'll be multiple parcels because like a condominium, they'll all be different property owners in the database. So you may have to aggregate 100, 200 like individual properties, which are the dwelling units, into one property to try to get the amount of waste generated. There's also oftentimes where there's physical address discrepancies. So you may have a property in the database that has one address, but maybe the business uses like the cross street address instead. So there's a lot of matching and verification going on there. I think I told you we use Google Earth. The Broward County Property Appraiser has a nice database too that has some detail and some mapping features, Google Earth. And then if we could not figure it out, we would send people in the field to go back and check what was going on for that particular property. So these are our use code groups. We took the database and put these into the category. There's about 15 non-residential, and in residential, we looked at single family houses, which we got from information supplied by participating communities. And then the multifamily housing are things we got from our field effort data from hauler collection during the study. And so you can see these are the 16 or 15 categories, non-residential categories. We grouped the all of the businesses we measured into these use code group categories and did some statistical analysis to come up with the waste generation rate for each. And so what this does, this is the end result. And so it's looking at from lowest to highest where these waste generation rates fall. And so you could see entertainment outdoors is 0.5 pounds per square foot per year. These bars that are in the green color, those are the housing, the residential. The single family home, even though we were looking at tons per home, we did an average home size and then convert it. So it's 1.1 pounds per square foot. That's just for presentation and comparison purposes. You could see out here agriculture, which is kind of surprising. We haven't really seen that before, but maybe we haven't worked in communities with a lot of agriculture. Looking back at that, because we thought that was strange, and we think it's more of a function of these types of properties having a dumpster, but the property, the building size is usually very small. For that property. So if it was something agriculture, it was waste, like I said, we couldn't go out and look in the dumpster. We couldn't see what was in that waste, but through several measurements, the dumpsters had a lot of material. And so the idea is we think it's a function really of just a very small building size associated with these properties. You can see eating and drinking. These are typically like restaurants and bars. Eating and drinking, we see in other studies, is usually quite high, 6.4%. So anyway, this is the type of information, these waste generation rates you can use. You can group into, low, medium, and high and charge accordingly by square footage. These are things you can use to develop that non-ad valorem assessment so you can judge the fees when you know how much revenue your system may need to collect in the future. And with that, that's the end of my presentation. And I'm open to any questions.
Thank you very much, Stacy. That's we've been waiting for that for quite a while. That is garbage 101 right there. That was I think for all of us. Steve, when you were talking about the kind of information we've been starting to need, that's it. That's the kind, because we can't go any farther until we know some of those. How do you charge those kind of assessments?
We need a copy of that.
Yeah,
You got it. Yep.
yeah, and that's the kind of thing. Actually, put it on the web. Let's put it on the website.
Yeah, no problem.
I mean, you can point to this for everybody to be able to see this kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Stacy, thank you so much. That was fantastic. We're running kind of late. We've got quite a few more stuff. I don't know if we want to go Any questions right now?
I have 2 questions.
Okay, okay.
Just real quick, going back to the characterization study, did I understand that there was no opportunity to evaluate what's being put in at Monarch Hill versus the
Sounded
Vic?
like it. Stacy, you didn't do Monarch Hill, correct?
We didn't do Monarch Hill because at the time, I did call someone from Monarch Hill and kind of tried to talk it through, but the logistics were quite hard. They couldn't offer any support. They didn't have a good location to put us. You know, it required a lot of work. I did try to call them.
I don't need, I know we have limited time. The reality is
Okay.
it didn't happen. It should have happened, in my opinion, particularly as we're discussing the expansion. We should have known what was there, what could be diverted. There was very interesting information that came out of BIC about what could be done. And we don't have that from Monarch Hill. And I would hope that the county will be able to figure out how to get that characterization, independent characterization, before any decisions are made. Second, just real quick, it compels, and I think everybody probably feels the same way. We need to begin now on a lot of this. We don't need to wait for the master plan for some of this, into the education and individually what we need to do. So great study. Thank you.
Okay.
I actually agree with you, Mayor, on the education piece, because my mouth is still open as to all the opportunities there for us to separate the garbage and kind of, I would love to have a copy of that.
Yep.
I have a built environment subcommittee in my city. It might be interesting for us to start thinking about how we can use that data now.
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff there. And because that was mainly done at the BIC, there is a lot of stuff taking place now in terms of hiring. I think we've hired consultants that are getting things kind of in line to do that stuff over there, just so everybody already knows. Okay, we're going to go to real quick. Stacy, thank you. Last one. A wonderful report, and I'm sure we'll be back in touch with you on this. I know this is a long time coming, but you all did a fantastic job. Thank you. I'm going to give you.
Oh, thank you very much.
It's a lot of work and very helpful, and I'm sure our consultants are poring over this as well. So, okay, with that, we'll go to quick county update, Monarch Hill, land use plan amendment.
Kevin Kelleher again. Real quickly, on November 12th, the county commission had a public hearing on Monarch Hill, and there was basically 2 requests here. One is to utilize the 26.2 acres and change the designation to use as a landfill. The other one was to look at increasing the height of the landfill to 325. After much public comment and debate, it was continued to the January 28th meeting. Also on the county side, just want to let you guys know that, and I think I mentioned this at a previous meeting, that we are doing a recycling analysis as to what we can be doing differently at the Broward County landfill. There's 3 parts of that we're looking at. We're looking at yard waste, our C&D and bulk, as well as glass. And some of the stuff that we'll find here will help out. Just to clarify what we are doing currently at the county landfill for the bulk and C&D is we do recycle out the yard waste, we do recycle out tires, and we do take out metals. There's more that we can do, and that's why we're doing the analysis. We're hoping to have the analysis back in the next couple of weeks so we can have an update for this board at the next meeting.
Good.
Just real quick, thank you, Kevin, for that. I look forward to that analysis, and I would hope that the county, before it makes any decision on Monarch Hill, actually does a waste characterization study. What we saw from this and BIC and the admission that there's always more that can be done should be part of that analysis before there's any decision by the county to agree to any extension of the Monarch Hill. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Now, our consultants. A quick update on our master plan. Okay. Take your time.
Chair, Executive Director, Council, members of the Executive Committee, and the public. I love the discussion today because it's starting to really take shape. I know that our project management plan has been distributed to this committee. That includes the status of all of our deliverables to date, as well as a schedule update. I do want to speak to the waste composition study in terms of the integration. These are building blocks. What that study has allowed us to do within our task 2, which has now been presented to you for your final review, is we can now apportion waste stream components by community based on that information. I know that the executive director, when he sent out that memo, has asked for final feedback by the 29th of November. If you need not wait until the 29th, you can provide that feedback at any time up to that point. And hopefully y'all will have a nice Thanksgiving, so you're not worrying about that. I think it's important to know that there are dynamics within the master plan. It was constructed in a way that there are individual white papers that are being made available to you. They really do stand alone. And with your feedback and the feedback from the general public through surveys and through the public workshops, we then will tell the story of how all of those fit together and ultimately reflect recommendations for policy direction. I do want to provide an update on the various deliverables. Task 4 really is the meatiest deliverable for us. We needed to get to be substantially complete with Task 2, which really laid the groundwork for what are the options to achieve or exceed.
See what Task 4 and Task 2?
Sure. My apologies. Task 4 is the future needs assessment. And through that, we've developed a series of scenarios that will explain the trade-offs in terms of environmental impacts for each option to get you to the ultimate goal, which is meeting or exceeding the 75% goal. The Task 5 white paper, which focused on regulatory requirements and the policy review, has been submitted to the executive director. I think it's also been distributed to you. We do ask for your timely feedback so that we can wrap that up. We also just yesterday submitted the education and outreach plan, and I'm not sure that that's been distributed yet, but that should be forthcoming. And again, your timely review will be very helpful for the additional work that is occurring outside of our contract. Our goal is to have the substantial portions, the white papers, wrapped up by the end of December, and we're targeting still February for the draft master plan. And again, there's a synergy with the education and outreach efforts, and I agree with the points that were made that there has to be baseline understanding of what the considerations are, so that you can hear from the voice of the customer as you're deliberating and making policy direction. I guess I'm going to leave you with this thought. It's something that I've shared before, but while we're all thinking about solid waste, many people just put it at the curb. So I'm going to invoke the quote from William Rathje, said, "Garbage is in sight, but out of mind." And through the efforts of this Solid Waste Authority, we're really elevating the discussion, and I think it's going to result in good policy direction for the future of the Solid Waste Authority.
Thank you. Any questions? Member Schuer.
Just a comment in talking with my friend Bob Myerson during my bagel break. Talking about education, right now some of us have taken the Solid Waste Authority website and put a link on our city sites for interested residents. But Bob makes a really good point, which is maybe there's more that we could be doing in as we move along, having something that the Solid Waste Authority develops for each of us to put on our city sites that's a little bit more than just a link. And just like you just said, just teaches people about trash at the beginning, what it is that we're all throwing away, the opportunities to recycle, nothing specific, but just as we move along and learn more, I'm wondering if there's a template per Bob's suggestion that we could each keep on our city websites and allow our staffs to push out just to start educating before there's anything to even ask residents to do. Because right now, the only thing we ever hear is that we're not recycling enough, and that only comes from residents that are interested in recycling. We have over 150,000 residents, and very few are interested in this. So I think if there's something we can do that's colorful and enticing to to kind of allow cities to just push it out there so that by the time the hard asks come, people have a little bit more knowledge.
Yeah, I think people seeing some of this stuff that we saw today,
Yeah.
some of that, because that's just overview facts. It's not saying, what are you supposed to recycle?
like,
Because
I
not,
think
not
Bobby
every
said-
city's recycling, but just those kind of overview.
I mean, I think it'd be fascinating for Hollywood residents to see, and we have it now in the task two, how much garbage Hollywood generates. No one has any idea.
Right. Or where it's going.
Yeah. Vice Chair.
Yeah. So a little bit, just a little maybe teaser on the education side of things.
And as we're talking about education, we have to start young. We're talking about doing it on our commission meetings, but a lot of high schoolers and middle schoolers do not look at our meetings. They just don't. And especially high schoolers, because they're going to be the ones that are going out in the real world here soon and going to find out, wow, look what I'm paying for garbage or what I'm paying for whatever. And they need to know why and why they need to recycle and how it's done. So we need to find not just one for our city, put on our city websites, but for go to the high schools with, and maybe middle school. I don't know how young we want to go, but we definitely have to start at middle school and high school because they will make a difference. They will in the future, and we have to teach them now.
There are some really good discussions going on now, right now with the school board and with regarding all of their cafeteria food and source separating all of that to go. And those are really good discussions going on of how to source separate with no contamination. So that's in the works. Go ahead.
Well noted, everything that you said. We want to be able to roll these things out. We know that we need to start this education. We needed a baseline to understand where we're at with regards to not only the education, but where we are as a community, that status update, especially with regards to task 2 completion. As you've heard, there's a number of white papers that'll be coming out. You have 2 of them already. The third one, task 8, will be out later today. I got it yesterday. I haven't finished reading it. I'll get it done today, but you'll get it shortly. And you'll start seeing a number of the other ones rolled out here shortly also. Between now and December, it's anticipated we have probably 90% of the white papers done at that time. So as we roll into January, you have the background needed to be able to start formulating our path forward and understand why we could possibly making certain recommendations going forward. With regard to the education real quick, and we're going to ask every one of you to do this. You'll go on site and then we'll start putting those out here. We started a thing called Eco Talks. They're 60-second clips with regards to us being able to build our database, our library, to be able to start pushing this stuff out on TikTok, other things. No, I'm sorry. Okay, we're staying away from that one. All right, so pushing it out through social media. I only brought that one up, I think it was because of member Davis at the time. But each of you, the first couple are coming out now. I did them myself. I think Mayor Gregg, you've actually done one also with regards to that. I think in addition to that, Beam has. But we would like each of you, we'll have different topics that need to be talked about going forward. And a lot of it's going to be framed around what you've learned today. We need your assistance. We'd love to be able to put you in front of the camera, develop your 60-second, discussion with regards to that, and show that we're all involved with regards to this process. We'll have the first few examples out again that we've done recently on the website here very shortly. You'll see that, and that's one of the tools, just one of the tools to try to get the information out and start at that education process. We also will be working with the school system. We needed to get to a period of time where we understood our pieces. So we will start that again. We've been very helpful, especially the League of Women Voters, with working with the authority and the school board to see what we can get back into the schools for that education as soon as possible and meet the state curriculum requirements. So along with that, one more thing is we have been contacted by a couple of the magnet schools that have various junior achievement and other items with regards to sustainability and recycling, and we will start communicating with them and through them. And there's probably an opportunity for the younger generations, those with the proper authority, to do some of the eco talks themselves also, and show that it's important to them. So there's a number of things in development. I'll start sending around different emails about asking your availability to do the 60-second eco talks on various subjects. And if there's something that you would like us to bring up as an eco talk subject, let us know. We'll work it out and we'll make sure that it happens.
Will all the white papers be going to all the governing members?
Yes, they have.
Okay. And to their alternates?
Yes.
And I would encourage posting them to the SWA website when they're reviewed and finalized.
Okay, and I would encourage you to go to their city managers as well.
Yeah, we'll work on that.
Okay.
And that's in process. We're not posting on the website until I get the feedback from you as noted
Okay.
in each of the emails.
That makes sense. Member Brad Cruz?
Yeah, separate topic, but very brief. Are we ready to move?
We'll be on new in just 1 second.
We're going to try to get to comments back, but my staff's out, so it may not come back. Second, I have an eco-tox. It goes very simple, and the county will pay for it all. So I'm happy to do that one.
I know you do.
And lastly, just as another point, just to emphasize on the way out, we have to have these PowerPoints, these presentations before we come to the meeting, okay? Just have to have them, it's one way or another. And also the financial report, if we could have that prior. Thank you.
I think that's, any other, I'm sorry, Member Dunn.
No worries. I was going to suggest in terms of the education, so we have a great opportunity coming up second quarter. Earth Day is
Absolutely.
April 22nd. So perhaps maybe using that as a benchmark, maybe coming up with something that we could each have as a standard message that we can roll out in our city. But thinking of Earth Day as like a target to start the education.
I think Sierra Club's here. Is Sierra Club here today? Because they,
They're right there.
I thought so. Okay. Because they may be able to help out on it.
Sure.
I know I worked with them on one project on it. Okay, anything else? Thank you very much.
Yeah, just for the benefit of Member Ryan, the waste composition and waste generation study was paid 100% by Broward County. So in addition to them pulling 50%.
Right, and so my eco-tox will say, keep them paying like they did the waste generation.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
You have no objection to paying everything else, right? While I have you up there, thank you.
I know. With that, we're going to go to new and old business. I know we're going a little late, but that was important to let that go as long as it needed to go.
Yes.
So new information. Member Breakers.
Very briefly, this is really a footnote to the Broward County Commission meeting. There, I believe Waste Management brought it up first, but there was this idea put out there that this original plan was supposed to be due last June, and then it got moved to November, and then it got moved to March, and then now it's going to get moved to September of next year. I just wanted to clean that up because it bothered me, frankly. We have worked very hard to stay on track, to be on track. The original plan was to have it out in November. It's moved to February. I think that's awesome, to tell you the truth, considering all the ground that's been covered, all that we've worked through. Everybody has worked really hard to keep us on track. I know Greg, he's been fantastic at it. And so I just wanted to get that on the record.
I think the work's speaking for itself on that and the timeline.
And just for that timeline, with regards to the white papers being out, like, again, mostly by December 30th, you'll see most of those. January will be us being able to work on the various recommendations and compiling that education, obviously, with this group. Our goal is to be able to have the final draft document developed by the end of January, first part of February, so that we can present that at the February meeting so that we can stay on track with regards to the public outreach meeting starting in March.
Okay. Member Dunn, you wanted to bring up the idea of a subcommittee?
Oh, yes. I forgot about that.
I didn't.
Yes. If we could have maybe a subgroup of maybe 2 or 3 of us that could work with the marketing team around developing a first draft
survey?
of questions for the
Okay.
second survey.
Is everybody okay with doing that?
Yeah, how do we deal with sunshine and everything else on that? We have to
Yeah.
have a meeting. It's complicated, right? We have to make sure we have it noticed and everybody can attend and all that. So legal needs to look at that.
Melissa, how about you just do it
How
all?
about a subcommittee of one for right now, and we can get it out to the rest appropriately.
Because we then have to make sure we're inviting everybody, that they all have an opportunity to participate. It's not as simple as just having a call and saying, hey, where are we on
Just
this?
work with the executive director?
Sure. Okay.
I think it's good to have some of this stuff would be better to have come in prepared, so it's a little more cooked before we get here.
Yeah.
You know, I think all of us would like to see that.
Things are moving real fast.
There's a lot of
We're
stuff going
starting to get in front of it.
Are they able to email the executive director their ideas before we meet?
Sure.
Oh, sorry. I'm actually, ask your own question.
There's a method that we do at the county that works pretty well, and it's prior to a meeting. We have questions raised, and then they're answered by the executive director, whoever. All of it, they're shown to everybody. So everybody's questions are shown, and they're all put forward. It helps tremendously.
Okay.
In terms of getting, by the time you get here, you've already asked a question, you've already had it answered, but everybody sees those things. It works pretty well. I don't know if we want to do something like that.
We're getting in front of it now. Yeah, we were making up a lot of ground with regards to where we were in the past, but going forward, we should be able to start working through that. No problem. And as far as the presentations out, I apologize. A lot of it was done yesterday, but we're on top of it now.
Okay. Nancy.
To Mayor Dunn's point, I think the I promoted you, Member Dunn. To your point, I think that we really want to be thought partners with you. And so, is it to council? Can I say, hey, Member Dunn, I thought of this? No. Okay, send it to you, and then you will.
Yeah, but it can't be a conduit. Hey, Member Ryan thought of this. What do you guys think of that?
Yeah, Jamie, we'll work through that. Jamie and I will work through that. We understand that we need to be able to communicate information out to this team.
All right, so what I will do is I will connect with you one-on-one, and based on the presentation we saw today, we can work through some ideas that popped in my head, and then I guess you will come back and share it with everyone, and you can provide feedback that way?
Yes.
And so we will create a space here for us to be thought partners with the ideas that is generated on this marketing strategy.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Member Shuham.
Well, just on that, I mean, if anybody has survey questions, just send them to Todd.
Right.
And then.
Yeah, I think it's good for us all to weigh in on this.
Yeah.
No problem.
But my comment was, like many of you, Hollywood has a volunteer sustainability task force. We invited Todd to come speak. It was phenomenal. People their jaws dropped at some of the statistics and information that Todd shared with them. So if any of you have those types of resident-driven sustainability committees or environmental groups, I highly recommend that you invite Todd to come and speak.
Monday in the Coral Springs.
And he's spoken to our commission
And
too.
thank you. I really appreciate the opportunities and us to be able to get out the word. And it is enlightening when we start talking about this with the various groups and have that interaction. It's not so much a presentation when I show up. I usually have the presentation, obviously, but it's more of a conversation and making sure that we can answer and work through the various concerns and questions within those communities.
Okay. With that,
one more comment.
Okay.
Executive Director Todd, based on our workshop, our commission would like you to come to our commission meeting and just address some of the questions they may have, and also address our residents, because those meetings are televised, and anything that is said, folks can go back and see what is being done.
I'll work on that with you.
I'll just add real quick, Todd already presented to the Hollywood Commission, and then that PowerPoint that he had is publicly available too. So it's a great idea to have him come speak to the commission too.
I thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. Anyone else? I have a motion to adjourn? We have a motion, second. We are adjourned.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yeah. Don't burn the bird. I know.
Yeah.
Greg, I know I'm 12.